Good evening. Welcome to the fourth and final installment of our Black History classes here at Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, which is a part of a collaborative effort that is taking place through Prophetic Voices, a coalition of concerned clergy. These classes have been going on at various churches throughout our community and our parish: Redwood Baptist Church, New Sunlight Baptist Church, Elm Grove Baptist Church, Donaldson Chapel Baptist Church, and here at Shiloh. I am grateful for your presence here this evening, and we're going to hurry up and get out of Dr. Samuel's way. May we bow our heads, please, in a word of prayer. Lord God, we thank you again that your divine providence has allowed us this opportunity to gather, and the purpose of our coming, that you might illumine our minds and our hearts about who we are, about from where we have come, and about the potential we have for where we are going. We thank you, dear God, for these who have come, and we ask that you would open their minds and their hearts, that they might leave here better than they were when they came. We pray, dear God, for our presenter, Dr. Albert Samuels. We thank you for the wonderful way that he has presented throughout this month, and we ask your continued blessings upon him this evening, that you might use him in a mighty way. Truly now, with the words of our mouths, the meditations of our hearts, be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. We ask now in the name of Jesus, who is our Christ. Amen. One housekeeping thing, and then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Samuels. The closing program for this Black History Month of activities will be on Saturday at 5:00 p.m. here at Shiloh, and it will include selected scenes from the play Mahalia. We'll be back in the fellowship hall, and we encourage those who can to come and share with us Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening at 5:00 p.m. Dr. Samuels, please come.
All right. Good evening to everyone. Good evening, everyone. This has been a lot of fun sharing with you and sharing in this experience together. I thank you all for being here. I thank Prophetic Voices for having the vision to do this, and I thank God for the opportunity to be part of this. One thing that that Pastor Smith neglected to mention, and I don't know if you was planning to make this available. I also put together sort of a Black history / Black politics, like a reading list that we can make available to everyone, so that so that you can all can continue diving more deeply into Black history at your own pace throughout the year. I always say that Black history should not just be a month. That is just something that we should do all the time. And so we're trying to equip you with some tools to allow you to do that. And so I'm sure that you will make that available to the congregation, anyone who wants it. All right. I wanted to quickly recap what we've done so far. We started out in week 1 talking about the centrality of slavery. We said that slavery is not an off-ramp on the highway of American history, but rather it is the main thoroughfare of America's central business district. And that much of what happened emanates from that. In the second week, we talked about there are a variety of ways, a range of ways in which Black people have resisted white supremacy. And then last week, we talked about Reconstruction, We call it, episode one and the sequel, and came with this idea that essentially every time there is a black progress or the perception of black progress, there is always an inevitable and predictable white backlash to that. And that idea, in some ways, it carries over into our final session as we talk about the rise of Obama and the aftermath. The rise of Obama and the aftermath. So let's just go ahead and kind of get to it. I want to take us back to 2008. Take us back to 2008. During the Obama campaign, the Obama phenomenon, as I talk about this, a lot of my students, and the further we get away from that, the more likely the students who I teach, they were kids when this was happening. But see, you all were adults when this was going on, and so. Let me open up just for a second. Just share with us, just share with us briefly, what were some of the things that you were feeling and experiencing as we were living through the Obama campaign and the possibility that he might actually win? Okay, anybody? What were some of the feelings or things that you were experiencing as you were living through the 2008 campaign?
Excited to know a black man had a possibility of being president.
Okay.
Tremendously excited.
Excitement. Okay. Anybody else?
I was excited, but I didn't think America was ready for a black
Okay.
man.
You're excited, but I'm not sure white folks ready for this. I see your hand in the back. Fear. Speak. Fear that somebody was going to hurt him. What's that? Inclusive? Could you add just a little bit more context to what you mean by that?
That we were, as a black people, brown people, that we were finally included in America, like we should have been a long time ago. America being stepped out.
Okay. A feeling of being included. I see a hand right here. Pride. Just, a lot of people were just proud to see, to see that. I see. Okay. You're surprised that he got as many white folks as he, we've seen black folks run. We've seen Jesse Jackson run, and some other people run. And so the fact that, some white folks are voting for him.
Glad school when I first heard his name mentioned in classes. I was enrolled in, and political science major mentioned it. And then it said it's a possibility that he would be running. And so I started to do some research. Seeing him on the front cover of some of the political magazines. And I was very enthusiastic about it, but a lot of people that I know older than I at the time were very fearful. Because many of them were saying, well, they're going to kill him, they're going to assassinate him.
Right.
And that was the counter. And then some were saying, believe it or not, he's not black enough.
Okay.
You hear those types.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? We may have time for maybe one or two more.
Yeah, I started to see I had a dream speech come to reality. That Dr. Martin Luther King talked about when the black children and white children come together. Started being able to have hope and dream again.
Right. The dream coming to reality. Okay. Do you have time for one? One more, I see a hand in the back.
I was proud of him because we finally had come up to that part, and I was really proud of him. And I was working, and I had to stop and look at television and see what I seen. It was good. I felt good all over. It was for all the black people.
Okay, all right. Yeah, yeah, very good, a very diverse range of responses. You know, yeah, again, a lot of black people were very hopeful. There was a lot of excitement. There was some fear. And I remember, for example, when in 2007 he was still in the early stages of his campaign. There was the National Conference of Black Mayors met in Baton Rouge, and of course that was a campaign stop. And Hillary Clinton came to the conference, but Obama came to Southern, and that was and already usually when people run for president, they don't start getting Secret Service protection, okay, until you win the nomination, okay? And he was already getting Secret Service protection, in fact, because Secret Service had to do a sweep of the facility before you can have an event. And so that already indicated that in front of this issue of threat, that he was already experiencing record numbers of threats. But this was the election when what was thought to be impossible became possible. Now, I wanted to take us back to 2008 because I think that, especially given what's happened since then, it's easy to forget just how hopeful, exciting the possibilities were during that time period. Here's this candidate, who by all stretches of the imagination was a long shot, just burst into a national scene in 2004 at the Democratic National Convention, wins the Senate race, running for president. And it's easy to forget after he served 2 terms and what's happened since then, how much of a long shot he was for running for president. Hillary Clinton was the prohibitive front runner in the 2008 presidential campaign. In fact, I think the Clinton campaign had already picked out the drapes to the White House. They were supposed to win this thing. She assumed they had all the advantages on her side. She had the biggest Rolodex. She had all these contacts. She had the Clinton name. The Clintons had always done well with black voters. And really, black voters are pretty practical. Throughout most of 2007, she led with black voters because the black people wanted to win. They weren't sure, and it wasn't until he won the Iowa caucus, which is a state that's 98% white, that a lot of black people started saying, well, maybe this guy can win. That kind of changed the calculus. But like a long story short, she ended up on the wrong side of a changed election. She had a pretty good strategy, and probably if it had not been 2008, it probably would have worked. But a lot of things happened between 2004 and 2008 that made that impossible. We could belabor that in and of itself, but she didn't win. Now, to her credit, she did work very hard for Barack Obama's campaign in 2008. She gave a very robust endorsement of him at the Democratic National Convention, and she worked hard for him. That wasn't obvious, because the party at one point looked like it was pretty divided. You know, there were some Clinton people who were very deeply resentful in June of 2008. It wasn't clear if that coalition would come together. But to her credit, they did come together, and they ended up, and obviously ended up winning. And so when you think about January 20th, 2009, you know, this was a day that so many people thought they'd never see. In fact, there were people it was almost like taking a pilgrimage to Mecca or something, you know. There were people who felt like they just had to be there in person, because we just couldn't believe this would happen. You know, I thought about this could happen maybe one day, maybe around maybe my 60s or 70s, maybe it happened. Not when I was 42. That this was going to happen. I remember our kids. You know, my daughter Olivia and Cole, during the campaign, actually, you know, they were actually on opposite sides. Olivia was adamant for Hillary because she was a girl. And, you know, of course, Cole said, I'm for Obama. This is girl-boy thing, you know. It was this idea that these kids were thinking that there's nothing wrong with a woman being president. There's nothing wrong with a black person being president. This idea that we could look our kids in the eye and tell them, yes, you can do anything in this country. I mean, it was intoxicating. And it was the belief that maybe something actually did change. At least that's how a lot of black people were thinking. And it was like the fulfillment of a dream. I think about what my brother Broussard just said. It said, well, Martin had a dream, but Obama was the reality. You know, we had all these almost biblical analogies. You know, like King took us to the mountaintop. Literally, the speech, the acceptance speech was August 28th, 2008, was exactly 45 days, 45 years to the day of the I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. Literally 45 years of distance. The election in 2008 is 40 years after 1968. The Chicago Convention that broke the Democratic Party in many ways, where you got people getting beat in the streets, for protesting the Vietnam War, and literally in Grant Park. In that same spot is where the crowd is celebrating Obama being elected president. When they announced that he won, that celebration is happening in the same place 40 years before. 40 has its significance, 40 years in the wilderness, where here we are celebrating his victory in the same spot where the police were beating Vietnam War protesters on live television. And so just the biblical, almost like biblical parallel was happening. King was Moses and Obama was a Joshua getting to the promised land. That's how many black people saw this. It was the largest crowd to view a presidential inauguration in history. But what did Obama's victory mean to white people? What did he mean to white people, Not surprisingly, white people saw this differently. For many white Americans, they saw Obama's victory as proof of the American ideal of equality. That what we say about America is true. These ideals are true. I was sensitized to that kind of early in the campaign. As John Kerry who was one of Obama's surrogates at the time. And this we're gonna get to George Bush in just a second. But he was defending Obama on one of the Sunday talk shows, and he talked about what it would mean to the world if Obama won, what it would say about America if Obama won. And it occurred to me, and he's like, wait a minute, this is about them. And sometimes people don't hear what they're saying sometimes. I was like, this is about them. For Obama's victory was seen as proof that America is who she says she is. A place where everyone, regardless of their background, can ascend to the highest levels simply based on their ability, not based on race, ancestry, or other previous conditions of servitude. And so maybe we were becoming a post-racial society as a result of this. And so if Obama could succeed, then the rest of you black folks ain't got no excuse. So Obama's success is going to quickly be used against black folk. Because we don't need any more affirmative action anymore. We don't need any more civil rights protections and things like that, because after all, we got a black man in the White House. But it's time. We were celebrating. We were celebrating. There was song. A lot of tears were shed during this time period. A lot of grown men crying in time. And so while people are celebrating and their inaugural balls are being held, folks are plotting against them. Plotting against them. Because see, across town, there was a meeting taking place. There were about 15 prominent Republicans having a meeting, and the meeting stood up. They were pretty depressed, because not only it wasn't just that Obama won, but the Democrats had won huge majorities in both houses of Congress. Now, they had regained control of Congress in 2006, and they expanded their majorities in 2008. So the Republicans came to this meeting pretty kind of downtrodden and depressed. However, before the meeting ended, they kind of settled on a strategy. And the strategy was unprincipled, relentless obstruction. Okay? We are going to oppose President Obama no matter what he proposes. No matter what he proposes, no matter if he proposes things that we have advocated or advocated for years, we're going to oppose it. And it's important to understand the context. We are in the midst of literally the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. When Obama became president at the time, the country was losing 700,000 jobs a month. The recession started happening in the fall, right in the middle of the fall campaign. And actually, we were teetering toward a depression. We were in free fall. So free fall. So we had bailed out the banks, $700-some billion, and then but the economy was Wall Street was expecting a huge stimulus package. So in the midst of this, Obama and some of the Democrats thought that here's an opportunity for us to work together. They came with a bipartisan package. They threw in some tax cuts, which Republicans have claimed they wanted, as part of the package. And though the Republicans have made tax cuts their holy grail by this time for decades, they were against it. Now, The stimulus thing passed, but it became a pattern that Republicans are going to oppose everything, literally unanimous, oppose everything that Obama proposes. Doesn't matter what it is. So when he proposed this climate change agenda, and the Republican Party had just the year before said that climate change is real. That was in the 2008 Republican platform. And they proposed certain things to deal with that. When Obama included that in his proposal, they all of a sudden rejected it. Republicans were the party that believed in an individual mandate for health care, that you should be legally required to have health insurance. That was the Republican plan, came up in 1993. It was the Republican alternative to Clinton's plan. It had been the Republican plan all this time. When Obama embraced that as part of his health care proposal, the Republicans all of a sudden discovered that it was unconstitutional. The Republican Party, it was actually the Republican Party who claimed that they were the party that believed that we should have lower national debt. They were against having these huge deficits. And we tried to create a bipartisan commission to come up with a debt reduction plan. They came up with a proposal, a combination of tax increases and spending cuts. It cut $4 trillion off the deficit. When Obama endorsed the proposal, the Republicans who had been part of the committee voted against their own plan. And on and on, and on and on it went. This was their strategy. That's strategy. And again, some people were saying this is unprecedented obstruction. Well, not really, because what they did looks a whole lot like the way the South responded to the Brown versus Board of Education decision. It's massive resistance. It was massive resistance, So that became the Republican strategy. It was, So only when it was this president, as bad as the Republicans treated Bill Clinton. I never thought we'd see anything worse than that, but. As bad as the Republicans treated Bill Clinton, no one ever interrupted his State of the Union address and say, "You lie."
Yeah.
And not only does nothing happen to the guy who does it, he fundraises off of it. He's a hero to some people for doing that. It's only when you have a black person in the White House that we threaten to default for the first time in our history on our national sovereign debt. We almost defaulted on our debt. Only when we have a black president in office do Republicans become really this crazy. So this is what the Republicans were doing. And then, of course, there's the Tea Party, which pretends to be a grassroots movement, but is actually sponsored by a lot of very rich billionaires, so it's more of an AstroTurf movement than a grassroots movement. But they were stridently opposed to Obama's candidacy. In many cases, they really didn't bother to hide, in some cases, some of the overtly racist symbols and things they were appealing to. They were calling Obama a Nazi. They were calling him a witch doctor. They were calling him all kinds of things. some days he's a fascist, some days he's a socialist. They don't even know there's a difference between the two, right? They just kind of, he's whatever they is, he's un-American. Oh, and he's probably not an American. You know, and maybe there was a conspiracy, you know, that maybe where's his birth certificate? Now, the GOP could have distanced themselves from this. They didn't have to go along. The establishment party didn't have to go along with this. But then you have weak leaders like John Boehner say, well, we're not in the business of telling people what to believe. You know, so they tolerated this stuff because they thought it was working for them. And in the short term, it actually was effective. Because despite some of the accomplishments Obama has his first 2 years, the Democrats get clobbered in the midterm elections. And the Republicans gain control of the House of Representatives. And in 2014, they regain control of the Senate. So this strategy of obstruction appears to be working for the Republicans. For a little while. So this is how the Republican Party chose to respond to the Obama presidency. Now, in the midst of that, there's also the question of what does Obama's presidency, or his slogan was "Change we can believe in." You know, that's a great slogan. He was one of the most effective campaigns that I have ever seen. I mean, I thought Bill Clinton was good. Obama was good. But how much? I think some people ask, how much change did his presidency actually bring for black folks, who really were the backbone of a lot of his support? And of course, the Great Recession, of course, hit black people harder. Anytime white America gets a cold, black people get pneumonia. That's just how it works. And there were some policies of Obama that we black people clearly benefit from. Black people benefited from the Affordable Care Act because we're more likely not to have insurance. So to the extent that 20 million Americans got insurance, that helped a lot of black people. So there were policies that applied generally to everybody that we got some benefit from. But to a large degree, on many economic indicators and social indicators, we didn't gain any ground. In fact, you argue we lost ground. Now, some of that is the result of trends that preceded Obama, and some people could argue that it was unrealistic to expect his presidency to eliminate a whole lot of those things. But over time, there got to be particularly by a second term, some people got a little frustrated. They sort of wondered, we aren't really getting much out of this. He's not targeting a whole lot of policies that way. And and sometimes, a few times when he might be asked about it, he give the answer like, well, I'm really president of all people. Yeah. Of all people. And we were a little hesitant in some cases to call him on that, in part because of how he was being treated. We were kind of protective of Obama, especially given some of the stuff that he was being forced to do. In fact, I think I know a lot of black people who cried, literally, when he came into the White House, in the press briefing room, and had to bring out his long-form birth certificate. So it must became kind of protective of him to some degree, and we're a little bit, hesitant about calling him to task about something. And I think this is something that we got to figure out how to do. How to do. Because one of the things I started hearing increasingly by some people during the second term, when people get a little frustrated and saying, well, Obama wasn't doing this for us and wasn't doing that for us. And And then I began to ask myself, well, what did we actually ask for? What did you actually ask for? They say, well, look, when the LGBTQ lobby, screamed, they changed their position on same-sex marriage. Well, that's because they actually came to them and said, you aren't doing enough on our issues. Now, there may have been other things in play, but they came to them. Some of the environmentalists said in 2011, look, they're trying to build this Keystone pipeline from Canada down to the Gulf Coast. They're going to bring dirty oil, all this stuff coming from fracking. And for environmentalists, so there's an existential thing that we're trying to deal with, just climate change. This will make things much worse. If you go along with this, you know what, we can't guarantee that we're going to be with you in 2012 to the degree we were in 2008. The Obama administration slow-walked the Keystone pipeline. Throughout they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. Folks made a demand. And so I kind of pushed back sometimes when people were saying this, because I was like, well, what did we ask him? What did we ask him for? We asked for nothing. And then act like we were surprised when you got nothing. As Billy Preston used to say, nothing from nothing means nothing. Now, and it's not, see, the point is, it's not just Obama we do this to, by the way. We do this to black leaders, period. A lot of black elected officials we allow them to get away with doing nothing. We ask for nothing. And I know there were a lot of people who were upset with a certain mayor around 2016, complaining about what he hadn't done. But you voted for him, you elected him 3 times, and you asked for nothing. And now you're acting like you're surprised that you got nothing. A group of black people who were meeting with Vice President Al Gore. This was several years ago when I think a black guy, I think it was Ron Kirk, was running for mayor of Dallas. And he said, how many people are proud of Ron Kirk's campaign? Black people, yeah. How many of y'all gave him some money? Hands going down. There's some basic rules of politics that we got to understand are not going to change just for black folks, accommodate us, okay? We're going to have to figure out a way to get our minds around it. And of course, for some people, this feeling of, I'm not sure that we got much out of this, became even more acute as the kind of Black Lives Matter movement got going. As we see these unarmed black people being killed by the police. It's going on over and over again. And of course, everybody remembers what happened right here in Baton Rouge with Alton Sterling. And literally, less than 24 hours later, Philando Castile in Minneapolis was murdered, by the police. And to be fair, Obama did. He did use the limited tools he had in his federal toolbox, but law enforcement is predominantly a state and local function, so he was limited in what he could do. Now, interesting that some of the protesters, who were upset in some cases upset that they thought the federal government wasn't doing enough, or also, by the way, some of the same people who stayed at home in 2010, who didn't vote in 2010, who actually kind of allowed Republicans to take over Congress. They allowed Republicans to take over the Senate who didn't vote, and then they're trying to figure out why Obama didn't do more. But the point is that a number of things led some black people to be a little disillusioned heading into 2016. Which opens the door to what happens next. Obama was indeed a powerful symbol. And he is a powerful symbol of what's possible potentially in America. And symbols matter. Symbolism in politics matters. A lot of people don't follow the ins and outs, all the technical details out there, but symbols stand for larger things. Symbols evoke emotions, which matters to more people. And so for many people, he symbolized a more enlightened America. But for some Americans, he also symbolized a fear that we're losing control. He symbolizes the browning of America. There were already talks about census figures about, America may be becoming brown by a certain decade. And 2008 kind of made it clear to some white folk this could happen. You see, it's just that Obama won. He won with only 42% of the white vote. And the younger generation is the most racially diverse generation in American history. And so that scared the heck out of a lot of white folks. And so conservative opposition to Obama, in many cases, was never about his policies. They called him all kind. He was a socialist. He was a fascist. He's an authoritarian. All these over-the-top metaphors to describe his policies. And a lot of times his policies actually were quite moderate. In fact, some liberals saying you're not going far enough. You're not progressive enough. But the substance of the policy didn't matter. It was him. And it's where he represented. And enter stage right, Donald Trump. It's impossible to explain Donald Trump's rise without first making reference to Barack Obama. There would have been no Donald Trump presidency if there had not first been a Barack Obama. And we talked about the birther conspiracy. It's the birther conspiracy, which catapults Donald Trump. He becomes the national champion of the birther conspiracy. He's going around claiming that he's investigating, about the birth certificate. I've sent my investigators to Hawaii, and you can't believe what they're finding. The reason you can't believe them because he never sent them, but he didn't tell it. He didn't tell it. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. He kind of kept this going, and he goes further. It's not just the birth certificate. What about his grades? Let's see his grades. This is the guy who paid somebody to take the SAT for him. But let's check out his grades. In the grades, his grades. Now he talked a good game. Of course, Obama really roasted him at that White House Correspondents' Dinner. And everybody in the room was laughing except Donald Trump. His face got all red. He can't take a joke, you know what it is. But now, being the coward that he is, you talk all that junk, but he didn't run. He knows he didn't run against Obama. He didn't run in 2012, so he waits until 2015, and then he announced his candidacy. And of course, at the time, few people took his candidacy seriously. It was kind of entertaining. You know, he began his campaign. It's about when Mexico sends their people, they don't send their best. You know, they bring drugs, they bring crime, they're rapists, they're murderers, and some of them are nice people. And it was kind of funny and entertaining. Nobody really took him seriously for a while, but he started to gain momentum. But Donald Trump personifies an idea. If you look at some of the people who ran for president, both in 2012 and 2016 on the Republican side, some of the most profoundly unqualified people ran for president on the Republican side. It wasn't just Donald Trump. But the Republicans were really communicating the idea that if a black man can get elected president, anybody can run. Bobby Jindal can run. He couldn't run Louisiana, but he can run for president. Chris Christie, who now is a critic of Donald Trump, but in 2016, Chris Christie, who was probably the only governor in America who was less popular than Bobby Jindal at the time. I mean, literally, the AIDS epidemic was more popular in New Jersey than Chris Christie. And this guy has the audacity to run for president. And so on and on it went. But the idea seemed to be that if Obama could run, if a black person can be president, then frankly anybody can run. And so, to the extent that the Republican presidential contest was not about issues anymore, because the Republican Party really stopped being concerned about issues a long time ago, and since it became a contest to see who could be the most authentic anti-Obama candidate, then it was easy. Donald Trump won in a landslide. He won that competition hands down. But, in the general election, of course, he couldn't win, right? He's not supposed to win. He wasn't actually going to win. And to be true, I don't think he even thought he was going to win. Now, Trump provided throughout the campaign ample evidence of how profoundly unqualified he was to be president. How profoundly unqualified was the president. And we could be all day citing the examples of how he demonstrated how so unfit he was, how unprepared he was, and how uncurious he was to be president, and the strange statements he would make about Vladimir Putin and Russia. All these things, he gave plenty of evidence, if you were looking, for why he was not qualified. However, but Donald Trump symbolized something also very powerful too. Donald Trump is the stand-in for white male mediocrity. White male mediocrity. And the sense of entitlement of mediocre white men. And the idea, and this idea that they're somehow entitled to rule. This is the point of white supremacy. The point of white supremacy is, and particularly for white men, is that they always get the presumption and the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. Everybody else has to prove themselves. So here's a guy who has multiple bankruptcies, pretending to be a financial success. A guy who stiffs a whole lot of small business people, pretending to care about the interests of average Americans. This is who this guy is. And here's a guy who is bragging about sexual harassing women. A man who is credibly accused of multiple examples of unwanted sexual assault. There is no universe in which Barack Obama or any black man could have been accused of even a fraction of what Donald Trump is guilty of, without that being utterly disqualifying, it would have been destroyed. Can you imagine if Obama had been running around on Michelle while he was president? They would have found out about it. They were looking for it. All kind of evidence they were looking for it. So, there is no universe in which Obama could have been accused of a little bit of what Trump actually has done. But still, he wasn't supposed to win. And so most political experts, and I consider myself one of them, thought that Hillary was going to win, in spite of flawed campaign, that she would win a very close race. And I remember election night, and I remember being down in LPB, and there were several states that we thought were going to go for Hillary early that night, and they didn't. And my wife called me. She's like, what's going on? I said, okay, well, she didn't win that state. And then one day I said, I had to say, well, if this and this happens, Trump's going to win. That's all she needed to hear. She said, forget it. She went to sleep. And that's, the Trump people themselves actually expected to lose. Trump did not write a victory speech. Now, in 2012, ironically, Mitt Romney did not write a concession speech. He was shocked that he lost. He couldn't believe he lost. I'm white. I'm rich. I'm good looking. That's all I need. That was the Mitt Romney campaign. He was shocked that he lost. Trump was shocked that he won. Now, Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. So, as bad as a lot of it is, the majority of Americans did not want Donald Trump, but because of this peculiar thing we call electoral college. Electoral college, she lost some close states, particularly some states where Democrats have traditionally done well, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, by very narrow margins. She loses the presidency. And so, especially for people like us who thought we knew so much, we had to figure out how did we get it so wrong. And so there were a whole lot of explanations about why it was wrong. Maybe Hillary was just a bad candidate. She just was terrible. The pollsters were just wrong. The pollsters made some methodological mistakes. Complacency among Democrats, who thought she couldn't win. Thought she was going to win, or Trump, he couldn't win, And of course, black voters always get blamed whenever something like this happens, as if white voters are not responsible too, right? Maybe the elites in academia, the people like us who think we're so smart, maybe we just kind of lost touch with average people and just didn't know what we were talking about. Or maybe maybe this is the righteous response of middle America who feels alienated by both parties. So we kind of had this coming. But what was interesting about a lot of the explanations was the efforts that folks went to try to let white supremacy off the hook. It was economic anxiety that was driving this. It wasn't, these people aren't racist. All kinds of people were saying all kinds of things. And even when they blame some white people, they blame poor white people. It's those poor white people. It's those rednecks. Look at the Trump rallies. They're the ones who did this. They're the ones who did this to us. Well, I hate to break it to you, America, but in 2016, the reality is that Trump carried every white demographic. He carried every white demographic. He carried the old. He carried those who were middle-aged. He carried young professionals. He carried college students, who we think are the most progressive people. He even carried that group, 18 and 29 among whites. He carried, not as much, but he carried that group as well. He carried every economic class. Whether it was whites who were under 50,000, whether it was whites who made from 50,000 to 100,000, whether it was whites who made 100,000 or more. He carried every one of those demographics. And he carried white males and white females. He carried every white demographic. In fact, if only white people had voted in 2016, Donald Trump would have gotten at least 389 electoral votes. That's about 80 votes that could have gone either way, which means he would probably have gotten some of those too. So we're talking about a landslide, a huge landslide, if only white people had voted. And of course, that's how some people would like it anyway. But yet the pundits seem to be determined to let white folk off the hook. White supremacy off the hook in this, but white folks did this to us. That's just the bottom line. And the Trump presidency seemed about nullifying Obama's presidency. His biggest idea was, if Obama was for it, I'm against it. So that's why he tries to destroy the Affordable Care Act. And had it not been for John McCain, he would have seceded. That's why he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. That's why he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord. That's why he pulled us out of a trade deal, the Transatlantic Partnership, the Pacific Partnership. Because Obama did it. It was almost if Obama was for it, he was against it. He was trying to undo it. The only real legislative accomplishment he had was the 2017 tax cuts, which gave 82% of the money to the top 1% of the population. That's it. And besides some other stuff he did, other crazy stuff he did, now, along with the GOP Senate, they stacked the federal courts, which we're going to be dealing with for a long time. You know, they pretended that we can't nominate a Supreme Court justice right before an election, when a black person was president. But weeks before the presidential election, you know, and Trump is in office, oh, we're just going to feel it. We're going to feel it. Okay? And the GOP stuck with Donald Trump through every scandal, you know, whether it was Charlottesville, whether it was separating children from their parents. They stuck to him through impeachment. They stuck with him no matter what scandal he committed. You know, even his murderously incompetent handling of COVID-19, where hundreds of thousands of people died because Donald Trump pathologically could not tell the truth. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are dead because of Donald Trump. And yet, 74 million people said, we want 4 more years of this. But he lost. But he couldn't accept that he lost. He actually anticipated he might lose. So he sowed distrust ahead of time. And of course he lost. But then he claimed election fraud without evidence. He raised millions of dollars for a legal defense fund that didn't exist. He tried to get state legislators to throw out the votes of millions of people within their states. You know, he's hoping the Supreme Court would be his ace in the hole. He tried to use the Justice Department to claim that that we had evidence of election fraud, and when they couldn't get people to do all those things, he tried to pressure his vice president to say you have the power to throw out the election votes in other places and send them back to the states. And when he wouldn't do that, he instigated an insurrection against our government that came close to seceding, dangerously close to seceding. And all the time while this was going on, you have people who know better, Republicans who knew better, who were going along with this. Now, those people are worse than the people there are some people a lot of people actually believe this stuff. People need to pay attention to what Trump supporters are saying at these rallies. People believe this stuff. And it's scary. But the people who are really despicable are the Republicans who know better. But it's the John Kennedys, it's the Steve Scalises, it's the Mike Johnsons of the world, mediocre white men who know better, who can count, who know he lost, and pretend that who refuse to say that Joe Biden is a legitimately elected president of the United States, who pretend, as Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, pretend that there was an actual controversy over the election. They know better. And they are more despicable than the people who actually, than the people who are genuinely misled. Led by this. And despite all that, despite all he's done, despite the fact that he's the only president in American history to be impeached not once but twice, he has 91 felony convictions. Felony counts against him. He's got some large civil judgments against him. He's got criminal trials pending. Now the Supreme Court just gave him a break today. They gave him a break today. We're gonna take up his case, but we're just kind of taking our time. With this, despite all of this, Trump could still win. Do not be fooled. Trump could still win. People need to get their minds around that reality. He could still win. Donald Trump is the embodiment, is the literal embodiment of all of the worst elements of American history. He embodies them all. He embodies its racism, its misogyny. He embodies its anti-intellectualism. He embodies its anti-immigrant nativism. The mediocrity, the stupidity, the pretending to be something that he is not. He embodies all of the worst elements of American history in bodily form. However, I just gonna say, I know there's some people, whatever you think of Joe Biden, whatever you think, some people think he's old, some people think he may have done enough, some people think he got all whole variety of things, and that's fair, and that's fair. Whatever you think, regardless of this, here's what people need to understand. If you thought the first term was bad, a second Trump presidency would be catastrophic. You're talking about the idea, people keep saying his second term, as if he would leave. That assumes he would leave. He wouldn't leave. He didn't think, he wouldn't leave. This is the person who wouldn't accept that he lost last time. This is the person who kind of praised the Chinese president when they changed their constitution to make their president effectively for life. He said, we ought to look into that. We ought to look into that. He probably feels that he got robbed of 4 years, so they owe me. That's just how crazy this man is. He wouldn't, you're assuming that he would leave. He wouldn't. You can kiss the rule of law goodbye. It's already under assault. He's already put the rule of law on assault. But he would appoint the attorney generals who would end any prosecutions against him. He would use the presidency as a shield against all of his state prosecutions. He would use the federal treasury. He would literally pillage the federal treasury because now we see he needs the money. He never had as much money as he pretended he had. And he needs the money. He would pillage the federal treasury. He would stack the federal government with henchmen because he's figured out last time he had people around him who stopped him. He wasn't expecting to win, so he really wasn't prepared to actually fill a lot of the positions. So in government, you're not going to have that problem this time because there are concrete plans. There are conservative think tanks that have concrete plans of things they would implement. And oh, by the way, those people who don't, a lot of people who take for granted that they'll be able to protest some of the things they're going to do. Well, see, they got a plan for that too. They got a plan for that too. See, they will probably use the Insurrection Act, a law from 1807 that allows the president to use the military domestically. See, you remember in 2017 after he got his inauguration, and you had the Women's Day protests, and you had people all over the country protesting, and people around the world protesting. They got a plan for that. He wants to be able to use the military. He thought about doing that during the Black Lives Matter protests, and he didn't. And he was talked out of it. And he actually expressed regret that he didn't do it. See, Donald Trump is going to tell you Donald Trump tells you what he's like. He talks too much. He can't help himself. He's a pathological personality. And some people are disarmed by the fact that he's just crazy. So he's not going to be able to do it. But the comparisons to Hitler and everything don't really make a sense because he's just crazy. But the point is that those kind of murderous dictators are crazy. They are crazy. Because the typical politician has a limit. Even as corrupt as Richard Nixon was, he had a limit. So when the Supreme Court ruled against him and said he had to turn over the tapes, he had a decision to make. Richard Nixon turned over the tapes. Because at the end of the day, even Richard Nixon had some respect for the rule of law. Donald Trump wouldn't have done that. So we got to get our minds around it. It would be far worse than anything. I mean, we're talking about really the end of American democracy as we know it. Now, we can speculate on some things, but they're telling you. When people are telling you what they're going to do, you should believe them. They're telling you what they plan to do. And so we have to, and since it is obvious that the courts are not going to save us. They're making that clear. The courts are not going, people have been hoping for somebody else to solve this problem. Which is the American way, by the way. We hope somebody else will solve it. We don't. Some of the framers generation, hope that another generation will solve the problem of slavery. Maybe it'll die out, but we don't have to do anything to solve it. Let somebody else solve it. And there's a lot of people have been hoping that somebody else will solve it. Well, nobody's going to solve it. The courts are not going to solve it. The Justice Department dragged its feet too long. The Justice Department went after all the little people who were involved in January 6th. But it wasn't until Congress started doing the January 6th hearings and made them look bad that they finally seemed like they got serious about actually investigating the people at the top who caused a lot of this stuff. And so that's part of the reason that we're in the predicament that we're in right now. We should have already had a criminal trial for Donald Trump. There is no way that if any of us had done a fraction of this, they would have put us in jail. if Black Lives Matter protesters were convening on Washington, they would have had the riot gear and the police and the guns and the tanks. They would have never even got close to the Capitol. And you got people organizing. They weren't even hiding. They were organizing in plain sight on the internet. Talking about what they were going to do. What they were going to do. And you know, and somehow we were unprepared for what happened, the chaos that happened. So, I've said quite a bit. You know, let me give a people. Does anybody have any comments or questions they want to?
Woe to the nation that forgets God. Jesus is our only hope. And if we regard iniquity in our hearts, He will not hear us. Clean it up so the Lord can step in. Otherwise, we can hang it up.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or things y'all want to say in response to some of what we said here? Can you say? Can you speak?
Still living. Why nobody have not put that little red light on him yet?
The short answer is I don't know. She asked, basically, she's wondering why she's still living. And I don't have a good answer for that one. Yes.
Could you address the potential for the elimination? Can you address the potential for eliminating the electoral college going forward? With modern technology being the way that it is there still a need for the electoral college in presidential politics?
The answer is no. The Electoral College is an 18th century relic that has no place in 21st century America. It's just a bad idea. Now, of course, getting rid of it, people have been trying to get rid of Electoral College for some time. That's going to take some doing. But in terms of, but just think about this for a second. The fake elector scheme. Okay. If we hadn't have had an electoral college in the first place, that would have made no sense. Because the idea was that if we can pretend that we're electors and that we can cast doubt on the election results in a handful of states, you know, then it won't matter that we lost the popular vote by 7 million votes. And so, in actuality, if you think about the Electoral College math, even though Donald Trump lost by a larger popular vote margin than he did in 2016, you know, if you look at the 3 states that were closest, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan. If you add up the margin of victory that Biden had in those 3 states, it's only about 42,000 votes. That was the difference, actually. So if Donald Trump carries all 3 of those states, okay, it is 269, which means both candidates are 1 short of 270. So that throws the election into the House of Representatives. Now, when we get to the House of Representatives, here's what happens. Even though Democrats had a slight majority in the House of Representatives, they vote by state delegations. And since Republicans control more state delegations, Donald Trump would have won. Something wrong with a system like that. But something wrong with a system in the 21st century where that's even possible. And it's because of things like this, because Republicans are able to win elections or win political power, even when they lose actual majorities. The Republican Party increasingly is being propped up by these undemocratic features of our system, whether it's the Electoral College, whether it's the fact that the United States Senate is very unrepresentative, because you got a small state like Wyoming has the same representatives as California, even though it's 73 times more people. So Republicans, you look at the Republicans in the Senate right now, they actually represent 41 million less Americans. But they can block popular legislation from becoming law. So it can pass in the House, and they can, and then because they filibuster, and that's what, I am glad that Mitch McConnell is retiring. He was one of the absolute worst Senate Majority leaders in American history. But the radical commitment to filibustering, they filibuster everything, not just some things. Everything. You can't even pass a budget. You can't, even the most routine legislation requires 60 votes. They do it so often that people actually think that's the rule. No, the rule is 50 plus 1. So it's Republicans have used that and gerrymandering. These features. So actually, what we need to do, first of all, we need to win this election. But what we really need is a broad democracy movement. Because there are a lot of structural problems with our democracy that need to be addressed, and they can't be addressed in one election or or 2 elections. But we need to have a broad democracy movement to reconsider a lot of these structures, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, but we've done this before in American history. A lot of things about the way we do elections today are not the way we do things now is not the way they've always been done. And it doesn't have to be. There are other ways to which you can have a democracy in other ways. So we need to start imagining different structures. Yeah, I see him here. He has 91 felony counts across 4 different jurisdictions. He is probably going to be a convicted felon by the time election they have. The Manhattan hush money trial will happen on March 25th. He can't get out of that one. And he's probably going to get, it's a pretty straightforward case. He's probably going to get convicted. Now, there's nothing that prevents him from still running for president, even as a convicted felon. Yeah. Well, yeah, we actually had a guy run for president from prison. Now, of course, he was a minor candidate. You can run, but I guess the framers never thought we'd have a person like this. Or at least they hoped we wouldn't have a person like this. Any other questions real quick before we? Yes.
The first question you
Mm-hmm.
I'm 72 years old and I've seen a lot. I'm at that point in my life that I have hope, but my hope just lies in Jesus Christ because I know that's the only answer for me. I'm not speaking about anything else. But if you're living in a society, in a world where you know what the right thing is to do, how do you fight when you have so much against you? Because I realize black people have power if we would come together and stick together. But a lot of times, even knowing that, when you present your case, it goes back to the white supremacy. The white man has forever thought that he was in charge. So even when you go with something, it doesn't matter. I was laughing earlier what you said about the counts and the sexual thing. If that had been a black man or Barack Obama, because if you think about it, and I'm not upholding him or saying that he was right, but you have one man that committed or supposedly committed all these sexual things, and he goes to jail. But you have another one that goes to the White House because he's white. So how do black people, people of color, let the other race know that I don't want equality, I want equity?
Yeah. Well,
And that's why I could get excited about Barack Obama. But I just feel like this country, America, that's built on the very thing that they fighting against, just not ready for it.
well, your question is actually getting to where I want to close. Okay, because you know what? We don't know how the 2024 election is going to turn out. We don't know what lies beyond. Even if he doesn't win, we don't even know what that means. Know what that means. But I do know that my Redeemer lives and ever prays for me. I know the eternal life he gives from sin and sorrow free. And so because he lives, we can face tomorrow. Because he lives, our fear is gone. And because of that, I know who holds the future. Because life is worth the living because he lives. We descend from people who were familiar with hard times, who have experienced things that for some of us are unimaginable, that some of us didn't personally go through, that were harder than what we've gone through. And not just our physical ancestors, African American, but our spiritual ancestors have, in many cases, have experienced things that are hard and everything. But many of them recognize that they were in a strange land. We're still in a strange land. If we are, if we are Christians, we have dual citizenship. We are citizens of this nation and this country, and in this context, we should do everything we can in the process to be active citizens. We should advocate for the poor. We should protect the right of people for the right to vote. We should speak truth to power. We should talk to our friends and talk to our neighbors. We should basically do those kind of things to hold elected leaders accountable. We shouldn't give in to despair but we work and we do things and do things. And so we should do that work. We should do the work of the church. But we should also recognize that in the short term, we don't know how this is going to turn out, at least in the beginning. We don't know how the election is going to turn out. We don't know what policies may come. We don't know what all the things that the government may try to do. We don't know all those things. But in the same way that Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, when they were faced with the choice, they were in a strange land. They were faced with the choice. You know what? If you bow down to this idol, we'll go fine with you. But if you don't, I'm going to throw you in this fiery furnace. And what God can save you from my hand? And they said, well, we're not going to defend ourselves against you in this matter. It says, he basically said, you can throw us in here. The God we serve is capable, is able to deliver us from the fire. But even if he does not, even if Trump wins, even if he does not deliver us from the fire, we're not going to serve your gods, because we know that even if we burn up in the fire, there's a different home that I have. It's a place where there ain't no racism. Okay, it's a place that's paved with streets of gold. It's a city that has that has 4 gates, and I'm wrong. It has 12 gates. It got 3 gates in the north, 3 gates in the south, it got 3 gates in the east, and it got 3 gates in the west. You know what? Ain't no crying in that city. There's no dying in that city. The pharmaceutical industry will have been put permanently out of business. So even if you throw us in that fire and God chooses not to save us, I got a better home. We got a better home. We got to remember that our charge is to trust God no matter what. It's to trust God no matter what. Man thinks he has power. God has all power. I want to thank you all for your participation in this series. And turn it over to Pastor Smith.
Again, we're extremely grateful to everyone. We're grateful to Dr. Samuels for 4 excellent presentations throughout the month of February. And I'm personally grateful to you. You have been here, you've been consistent. You fought through Valentine's Day and Mardi Gras, and you came anyhow. I am extremely grateful for your presence. We do want to remind you again that on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, we will have our closing program, and if you're able to come and share with us, we encourage you to do so. Thank you for those who have been viewing. We've had a large viewership over live stream, and we're grateful for that as well. May we stand together, please. Repeat after me, please. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and give you peace. Amen. God bless you.